let's get into it. Coach Colin here. We are going to be talking about Ikigai, which you'll see what that means in a minute. Some of you might know. The circling of life, which is a concept that I came up with, and Alan Watts talking about meaning and purpose, and Joe Rogan and Willie Nelson's son, Lucas Nelson, talking about finding your purpose. So let's just jump right in. I love doing these deep episodes. Let's go.
Play my songs that I've written, and I get crowds that would do that, and so that gave me the confidence to keep going. And I first started playing music in order to get closer to my father.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So I he would be gone all the time,
Right.
and I'd be missing him, and so in order to get close to him, I figured I need to speak the same musical language, and so I learned young, and I wrote a song young. That's on the new album, actually, I got. It's called You Were It. It's the first song I ever wrote when I was 11. And my dad loved it so much that he covered it at the time, and he put it out on his album back in 2004 called It Always Will Be. The album was called It Always Will Be. And that gave me the confidence at a young age. Chris Christopherson came up to me, and he's like, man, you don't have a choice but to be a songwriter. And so I had all this inspiration at a young age. Kind of like an athlete at a certain point, you kind of have to look at like, oh, well, if I have a talent at this, I have connections in the industry, I need to work like I was going to go to the Olympics on this, because it's something that I can do that will make it so that I never have to rely on my family or my father for anything.
Right.
My whole goal in life is to discover who I am as an individual,
Is that a part of the difficulty of growing up with an incredibly famous father?
I think Viktor Frankl has a book, a very famous book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Uh-huh.
And it's about Auschwitz, and he was an Auschwitz survivor, and he wrote about what was the common denominator in terms of people who persevered and survived in these camps. And dignity and meaning were the common denominators generally. And so finding what you mean in this life to yourself, it doesn't have to mean anything to anyone else. And I think that's where, for me, I've lived my whole life trying to discover who I meant to myself, so that at the moment of my death, I can look back and say, I did something that I enjoyed, that was meaningful, that gave me a sense of purpose.
Yeah, there's both a blessing and a burden to being the child of someone who's incredibly famous at a thing that you're trying to do.
Sure.
There's a lot of sons of athletes, for instance,
right,
that live in their father's shadow, and very few of them ever rise to the level that their father was at.
Sure. I think for me, I was never trying to be as great as him. I was only trying to be close to him, because more than anything, my father's a great human being. He's a well-rounded, kind, empathetic human, and I am truly grateful to be his and my mother's son. Because I have a good family, I'm lucky.
That's awesome.
I have a good parents. So what I was trying to do was just be closer to him, and as a little kid, the best thing my mom ever did was when I was earlier. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my brother had just passed away not too long before this, actually. And I would cry every time my dad would leave, And my mom sat me down one time and she said, it tears him apart when you cry like this, because he doesn't want to leave. He's going out there, he's making people happy, he's giving people joy, and he's doing what he came here on this earth to do. And he's supporting this family. And so the support that my mother had for him, at that moment, I never cried again. I was able to let go of that idea, and then just from that point on, work towards creating what would make me happy in my life and give me the same joy, and then be able to take care of a family, hopefully. One of my greatest sources of pride is that I haven't had to ask my parents for anything. I bought my own house. I bought my, I went and did Stars Born, and I got, I've been able to make myself a living, and I think that makes my parents proud. It makes my dad proud, and that's what I've always wanted to do. That's been my whole life, is wanting to make them proud.
That's awesome. Well, it's a great motivation, for sure. Especially when you have great parents.
I'm lucky in that way. You know, I know a lot of people who have broken homes and grew up, and even I caught Dad at a good time. I mean, my dad was 55 or so when he had me, you know, and so he had already been through a lot of his demons and gotten through them and faced them, you know,
Yeah.
and was still going through them at the time that I was born. But he had come out of, you know, a life of habit and sort of formed the ones that would take him at that point to where he is now at 92 years old. You know?
Wow.
And so I got a good version of Dad, you know, who had grown since, you know, and so, man, you know, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I feel like I was able to be exposed to a lot of great music, a lot of great mentors, you know, in my life, and I'm also lucky that at a young age, I'm grateful to my younger child, myself as a young child for having the wisdom to say, all right, work hard now, forget about parties, forget about hanging out, work hard, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, practice your guitar, write all the time, sing all the time, so that when you get to a certain point in life, you'll have something to show for it, you know, something that you can leave behind that's yours, you know.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's what most people in this life want. They want a purpose.
Yeah,
You know, they want something that means something both to them and to other people.
exactly.
Yeah. It's hard to find.
It's hard to find a purpose, you know. That is something that I've always had growing up, and I think it's because I was, you know, again, I'm grateful to that younger kid. Sometimes I feel like he's wiser than I am now. You know, that younger self is like almost, you know, now that I'm sober, I mean, I quit smoking weed, I quit drinking, and you know,
When did you do all that?
really around the pandemic,
Yeah.
but
Wow. Good for him. Different than his dad, huh? That's very interesting. I guess I'm like that too. I went and got sober. My dad wasn't the soberest person for sure. We tend to veer away from those types of things, I guess. Now, that's very interesting. You know, he said something like, who I am meant, who I meant to myself. That's what he was trying to discover. Then he also said what his dad was doing what he came here to do. Very interesting stuff. We're going to move on to Alan Watts. He's going to tie all this in. I'm going to tie it all in, but Alan Watts makes more sense of what they're talking about because he's talking about purpose and meaning in a way that only Alan Watts can. Check this out.
An old Chinese philosophical text that uses the expression, if purpose can be used to achieve purposelessness, then the thing has been grasped. The thing meaning the whole point of life. So then to understand this point of view in Chinese and Japanese thought, I think we should investigate, first of all, a little more clearly just what we do mean by purpose and meaning. Purpose is, I think, a word generally used by us whereby events are ordained to a future result. For example, if I do something like this, just doing that alone doesn't appear to have very much purpose. But if after I have done that, in the future, I do this, then it appears that what I did in such a chaotic way in the first has purpose. So purpose is acts acquiring a meaning in terms of a future to which they are leading. We say, I have a purpose when I am going down to the store in order to buy groceries. If I'm going down to the town for no reason at all, then you might say my action is purposeless. But if I'm going to buy groceries, then it has a purpose. Now, what about meaning? The idea of meaning is very close to that of purpose. And this may be a good illustration of it. Here is the word cross. And the word cross is a sound. It's just a noise. But that noise has meaning for us because we know that it relates to this. That is a cross. But the noise cross is not this figure. But cross has meaning because it represents or stands for that actual concrete figure. And so, at any rate, one sense of meaning, which we might call here the first sense of meaning, is the function of a sign, a noise or a symbol which points to something other than itself. For example, if we didn't take this as a cross, but took it as a plus sign, then it would in its turn become another sign having meaning, and its meaning would be the process of adding. Now, of course, if life has to be meaningful in these two senses, in the sense of purpose already demonstrated in the sense of this, at least this first sense of meaning, then it means that events, people, things are only meaningful or purposeful insofar as they lead to something else or insofar as they represent something else. And in a way, this makes people and things rather like symbols and words which always refer to something beyond themselves and don't mean anything in themselves. There's also another sense of meaning, and that is the sense of order. We would look at this object, for example, and say, well, that's a kind of a senseless shape. That doesn't mean very much. It's just a chaotic blob. But if we introduce order into it by making that object symmetrical, we will immediately recognize the phenomenon of pattern, because an element of recognition comes into it. In other words, we recognize the repetition of the shape in reverse. And this element of recognition,
What does that look like to you? Tell me in the comments. What does that look like to you?
makes it meaningful, pattern, orderly in this particular way. And so, one of the dominant ways in which a person can say that life has meaning is then that it has order. But on the other hand, if the orderliness of life is taken too far, we then move over into another kind of meaninglessness, which we call monotony. In other words, if every day is the same as the day before it, if we find ourselves involved in a routine where we're doing exactly the same job day after day after day after day, we find that through an excess of order, our life begins to lose vitality. And so it seems that we need a kind of disorder in order to give life to order. We need a kind of nonsense in order to make things really meaningful. We need chaos as an essential element of life. Now, in the Western world, we tend on the whole to emphasize order.
It's very, very interesting. You know, even if you break down what he just said, meaning equals order equals monotony equals meaninglessness. It's very interesting the way that works. Because when you're looking for your purpose, we often, I don't know about you, but I use the words interchangeably, even together, one and the same at times. You know, when you're looking for your purpose, you're looking for your meaning. Once you find, you know what it is, once you're looking for your purpose, which means that you're looking for, and I like how he actually did this, because if you're looking for your purpose, you're looking for the big picture, right? And then that is your purpose. It looks like chaos, and then all of a sudden you figure out this thing, and you figure out that thing, and you figure out this, and you figure out that, and then all of a sudden there's a purpose. And now you have meaning. And now that you have meaning, you have a cross to bear. I didn't plan that. Maybe he did. Who knows? But now that you have meaning, you have a cross to bear. Now that you have a cross to bear, there's work to be done. And as you keep on doing the work, there is this meaninglessness. But here's the thing that I'll point out that he's not touching on, is that as you do the work towards the thing that brings you meaning, you then will see ups and downs. And that will take away the monotony. I've experienced it 100 times. I just watched a video from 2023 where I was talking about having a hard time, and I was at 25,000 subscribers, and I was really upset, and it seemed like nothing was working. And I'm currently in that same state of mind right now. So it's like there's just ups and downs and ups and downs. So that, in my mind, would take away the whole monotony, because now I have to figure it out again. I have to figure it out and move this around and do this, and shorter videos, longer videos, interviews. I'll call it the tinfoil Speedo experience. That's what the interview show is called, which it is. But it's that whole figuring it out. Now, I will say, for anyone who doesn't have their meaning or their purpose so far, I always say it in episodes, and I always just say, everybody knows. Everybody knows that if money was no object, what would you do? That is your purpose. That thing that you would do. I told you I was going to talk about something called the circling of life. And it's funny because it's like you keep going in circles until you learn your lesson. And the lesson is that whatever you are good at, whatever is at your core that you're naturally good at, that's the thing that you're supposed to be watering and growing. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But every time we come up to what our natural skills are and natural abilities, we always say it can't be that easy. And we find a course, we go to school, we find a mentor, we do this, we do that, online schools, YouTube tutorials, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden we come back to our core. Somebody says something, oh, you're naturally funny, you're naturally this, you're naturally that. And we ignore it and we say it can't be that easy. And we go around again and it comes up again and we say it can't be that easy. And we go around again until you get the message that what you are naturally good at and what you naturally have inside of you, that was the thing all along. And it's like, that's the lesson. We're naturally given it, and then we're let loose into the world with free will. And it's almost like a test to see, is he going to stumble onto the thing that is going to bring him the most happiness? And we look every single place except for in ourselves. It's very interesting the way that works. I'm going to move on to Ikigai. Ikigai, it roughly translates to why you wake up in the morning. It's a Japanese thing, right? It's a Japanese word, I should say. So when you heard Lucas on Joe Rogan, what he was talking about having talent. He was talking about having connections. Then he talked about doing hard work, and he was happy because he was getting paid and he could be independent. So he had a talent. It was what he was good at. If you look here, what he was good at. Then he figured out what he could get paid for, which people don't realize right away, but he did because he had a father and and his father was doing it. So it made sense. Then he knew what the world needed because he saw the world needing his father's music. And then he fell in love with it because he was trying to get near his father. And that is the whole thing of Ikigai, because what you love and what you're good at, that's your passion. What you're good at and what you can get paid for, that's your profession and what you get paid for. And what the world needs, that's your vocation. And what the world needs and what you love, that's your mission. And all of those things intersect. And that is Ikigai. That is what we are supposed to do. And the thing about it is that we bang our head trying to figure out, what is the thing that I could be doing, that I could get paid for, that I would actually love? And I'm telling you, if you don't have that in your life right now, and even if you do, look to this diagram, because maybe you have what you love, but you're not completely dialed in and getting paid for it. Maybe you know what you're good at, but you don't quite know what the world needs. Maybe you don't even know what you love. Just try and dial in these circles, because the sooner you can dial all this in and actually get to the Ikigai, you will feel tremendously better. You will break through that meaning, order, monotony, meaninglessness. Because right now, what most people have in terms of meaning, order to monotony is actually meaning in their job. Their job brings order and structure. Because they're doing that and they don't love it, that brings the monotony. And then that makes you feel meaningless because it's not the thing that you love. But if you could make sure that the meaning is the thing that you love and get orderly in bringing that into, what you get paid for, what you're good at, you will not feel the monotony. To correct Alan Watts, if I so may, you will not feel the monotony and you will not experience the meaninglessness because you'll have the Ikigai. You'll have all of this going on at the exact same time. It's really, really something that you should think about. And I'll say it again before I leave. You know what the thing is that you would do if money were no object. You know what you love. And if you don't, search for it. You know what you're good at because people always tell you, but you ignore it because it's just something that you're good at and it doesn't really matter. You know what you can get paid for. And if you don't know what the world needs, you need to search more. But I'm telling you right now, forget what the world needs. Find what you love or find what you're good at. Ask people. And then figure out if what you're good at is what you love and figure out if you could get paid for it. And if you have those three things, you will figure out what the world needs because what the world will need is the thing that you love, that you're good at, that you get paid for. Anyway, I'm out.